Hello and welcome to Man's Model Moments, where I'm going to be painting this Damocles drop pod from Dindrenzi Federation in Planetfall by Spartan Games. And I'm going to be looking to paint it to this tabletop gaming standard. Perhaps not a medal winner, but it's good for general gaming purposes. So I've already based this particular model with some Reeves Artist acrylic, and I've also then washed it using some Vallejo model wash. This one's European Dust, and that just produces a basic tonal variation on the model. Gives it a little bit of depth. We won't be seeing much of that anyway. Okay, so we take, in this case I'm using Codex Grey, just very mid-grey, and then we'll be going over to Fortress Grey, which is much lighter grey just for the highlights. So we start with the Codex Grey. It's quite a thick paint. This is quite an old Codex Grey. You can't really see it in here, but it's quite gloopy. So that's fine. We really don't want a good liquid paint. If we're doing dry brush, we want it to be quite thick if we can. So we take off the excess and then just apply it, just trying to catch all of the edges. So it's quite a light technique. Because the thing is, with dry brushing, it's easier to do light dry brushing and put more on at subsequent dry brushings than it is to try and remove paint. It's almost impossible to correct a finish with dry brushing once you've actually got the paint onto the model. Okay, so just about done with one face here, so you can see how we've just lightened the edges there. If we compare it to just the primed, you can see there's the black, the primer. Whereas here on this face you can see how it's greyed quite a few of the faces and surfaces and edges of the model. So I'm going to carry on just completing this, and you can enjoy some music. So now I've completed the dry brushing of the Codex Grey over the whole model. You can see it's got the edges just caught with that Codex Grey, the faces, but the recesses have remained the dark of the black primer. So that just gives it the first bit of tonal variation. You can go over, increase it on any bits that you feel need it, but otherwise you can then progress to your next dry brush layer, which, as I mentioned before, I'm going to be doing in Fortress Grey. I'm going to be doing this in exactly the same method that I've just done with the Codex Grey, taking off the excess paint first. You have to find it's good to do the last bit on your hand, because you can get a real feel for how much paint is actually on your brush before you then progress to actually put it on. So there should be really almost nothing. You'd be surprised how much actually comes onto the model once you've done that. Okay, so I'm going to carry on doing this, and then we'll come back once it's actually finish with the Fortress Grey. Okay, so we finished the Fortress Grey, and now comparing it to our prior painted drop pod, we can see that the finish is pretty much the same, and this is where you can correct or change, increase any final highlights before you progress. So now we've actually done the dry brush on the drop pod itself, we can progress to the base. So as I mentioned before, we've actually already painted the base with the brown, avoiding those cracks and crevices closest to the drop pod. And we did that using the Reeves Artist acrylic, just for the general base groundwork. That was covered then by a wash, so just to remind you, we used the Vallejo European Dust for that one. And then we're going to actually build up the dry brush groundwork on the pod using 3 levels of colour. And we're going to start off with this one, which is Citadel Snakebite Leather. Then go on to a Desert Yellow, sort of a beige colour. We're going to finish up with this Bleached Bone, which is a very light buff. So we start with the Snakebite Leather, and we're going to use exactly the same process that we did previously, taking some of the paint, getting most of it off on the paper, just really removing the last bits. I use, say, my hand. And then we use the same technique, just dry brushing across the groundwork itself. You can see that's just starting to build up the light colour there, take a little bit of that sheen off. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up this, and again I shall leave you with the time lapse and some music. Okay, so we've done the Snakebite Leather all the way around on the drop pod there. You can see how it's built up. We've got a mid-brown tonal variation there, still leaving those gaps on the lower groundwork just for that to show through. So next part is to use the Desert Yellow, and again I'm going to go through in exactly the same way, just build up this level of colour on top of the groundwork. And I'm going to use exactly the same technique that I did previously. I'm just going to go across, lightly brushing over the top, just to catch all those highlights and ridges, while still leaving the lower part of the colour to come through. So I'm going to go ahead, complete the base, and leave you again, once again, with the time lapse. So now we've finished doing the Desert Yellow dry brushing stage, we're going to progress straight away to putting on the Bleached Bone, and we build this up in exactly the same way, just going on the highlights, and you can see that coming quite quickly, how that's building up now with the other two levels. So I shall leave you to the time lapse just to finish off this part of the groundwork. So now I've finished the actual painting of the groundwork, we can progress to the detail painting. I'm going to use Snot Green, just a quite mid-green, to paint these little detail parts, these little top parts, just for my unit markings. So I've got a red, a blue, and now I'm going to progress with a green. So you can see on the model there's a little ridge there. I'm just going to use that as the guide for actually doing that. So again, I'll paint these up and leave you with the music while I do so. So now we've finished those detail painting parts, I need to put on a second tone with that, and I'm actually going to use some Scorpion Green just to actually lighten the Snot Green I've already got. So I'm not going to use it neat, I'm going to mix it about 50-50, so I've got a very small amount of Snot Green and the Scorpion Green, mix those to create a middle green that I can then use on that green, just leaving some of the that's not green behind at the edges, just to give us a little bit of, again, bit of tonal variation, bring the green through. So I'm not going to go quite to the edge, I'm just going to use the tips. So I'll go ahead and do that and leave you with the time lapse. Okay, so with the green done, it's time for the final detail, which I'm going to use this Vallejo natural steel. I'm just going to go ahead and speed up the mixing of this with water, just get it right consistency, and I can do the detail. So I can do these little piston arms here, and these little tubes at the top. So while I go ahead and get on with that detail painting, I'll leave you with the time lapse once again, and with some music. Okay, so with that detail painted, I'm just actually going to use a wet brush technique, which is a little bit more than a dry brush, but not quite a fully loaded brush, just to highlight bits on the ramp here, and just at the end where the troops have come out and worn the paint off down to the metal. So just a little effect, and I'll just go ahead and quickly complete that. Okay, so we're approaching the final stages. Both of the pods are painted now. The only step that really remains to do is the groundwork to get this grass where we want it on the base. So I'm just going to use normal PVA glue for this and put it all over the base. So now we can see we've got the PVA glue where we want it. I'm going to use some of this, in this case Citadel scorched grass, but you can use any scenic scatter that you feel that you want and want to get the effect that you desire. So it's very simple. You just get a little bit of the scenic scatter and you just sprinkle it over the areas where you've got the PVA glue, just remove any excess. I usually do this over newspaper, but I'm going to just do it here just to give you the effect, but it can get quite messy, so I'd recommend you do that. And basically it just adheres to all of the PVA glue that's on there, and it doesn't take very long. It takes a little while to dry afterwards, but that's fine. So just take off any on the edges, just get the excess off your workspace, and there you can see we've got one finished drop pod. I just then usually tidy up the edges of the base just with some black paint, but you can see pretty comparable. And thank you for watching.